We've talked about, and in particular, the Honourable Minister talked about how many women around the world are rising to the top job, and in particular in Africa. We have 2 presidents, a Prime Minister, head of the African Union. Rwanda has 56% representation in the lower parliament, the highest in the world. All these are good figures, but my question really to you is, are Africa's women on the rise? It's a very simple one. Can we interpret all of that as being on the rise? Or is it just first signs? Are Africa's women on the rise?
I'm not sure that I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. I think you're on. Yeah.
I think it's really a bit of both. I think quite clearly the visibility of African females in major leadership roles is quite clear, and it's on the rise. I think at the same time, we have to be very careful not to fall back, so to speak, on our haunches with the presumption that we are doing so well. As I said, we are progressing. We are progressing quite, I think, credibly, and yet, as I put it, at the same time, even that progression begins to show us major gaps, which we need to work very hard as African females to close up. And I think that, as all the speakers have mentioned in one form or the other, it is clear that we need to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, at this point in time. And I think that we have all the support in terms of strategic frameworks to do that and to actually implement it over the next 5-10 years.
I want to talk about some of your particular experiences. It's not easy, as you said, getting to where you are. Let's talk about it from a particularly African perspective. How much does culture and tradition play a part in preventing, impeding the progress of the African woman in the political arena? The relationship between men and women, a male-dominated society, the peculiarities of it being African. How much, you could even tell me your own personal experiences, perhaps.
Yeah, there's no doubt that we have a serious cultural stymie. You see, it's improving. It's improving because we are working at it. I always give the example of Kenya. I'm sure there are Kenyans here. There was a time when to vote, you had to line up behind your candidate. So you can imagine a situation where a woman goes to vote with a husband and is not standing behind the husband. Domestic violence is waiting at home. You see. And the man, we do not say that men are bad. We never say that. We say men are brought up wrongly. You see. But we do have problems of men accepting women. If I might give another practical example, we had the president of Ghana who died, President Mills. John Atta Mills. He made a promise to the nation that 40% of his appointees were going to be women. And he meant it. It was not just anything he said. So he started with the local councils. I'll just give this example and then stop. He had to appoint the person who was going to be like the municipal chief executive, but with other men. And the person had to be voted for, but the president presents the candidate. Every time he presented a woman, the woman was voted against. Every time. The woman, they wouldn't vote If I say, how can a woman come and sit on top of us? This is why I say we need to improve the socialization.
Where does it start? Does it start from schools, from the very, very young age?
It starts from birth. And who gives birth to boys? Who is a boy closest to? Is it the father or the mother?
The mama.
Whose breasts will a man suck first?
That's the first time that's the first time I've ever heard that statement in any conference I've ever moderated.
But what I am trying to say is, yes, we have cultural issues. Yes, they have been abiding, difficult to get rid of. Let us focus on that. Let us get our women to be sensitized to a point where they get their boys to accept that you cannot do without a woman, which is most of the time the situation. But I also have to talk about empowerment, economic empowerment, giving a woman resources to be able to manage. And these little things, the international community has assisted very much in this regard. But they have helped. They have helped a lot, but there's still a lot to do. Women do not have a thick skin. So you know how, the African political environment is really dog eats dog, as it is in most parts of the world. How many women can take the heat in terms of the sort of things they will say? No.
On an emotional, psychological level.
It's terrible. And so let's bring our girls up to have skins as thick as mine.
Okay.
I say let them say.
Okay.
Let them say. It doesn't matter. The truth is the truth is the truth.
I want to bring in the other panelists in a moment, but I want to stay on this subject and ask the minister. I just want to read a quote on this very subject. When doing the research for this, a Cameroonian journalist called Chris Mbunwe said this. He said, "A lot of men still believe that when you empower a woman, you are empowering her to hurt them." That's what he said. And I thought that stuck in my head. Is he right?
Well, certainly not. However, having said that, he was perhaps taking it from a purely and probably fundamental male point of view, that you give power to a woman, you are therefore taking power away from a man in that particular sphere of influence. And I was just listening to our auntie and mother here, and thinking that she's quite right. And I think that speaks to what you've just said. The truth of the matter is, in many of our...
Yes, I think you might have to use this one. Is this on? Yes? Perfect.
The truth of the matter is that in many of our positions, as you go progressively up the ladder of leadership, you will, of course, find a massive resistance from the male camp. And I've come to the conclusion that, as she said, it really interprets itself into a kind of base, almost caveman-like fear of territory being invaded. It really goes back to the fundamentals. Particularly when you are charting new territory and you're coming into areas that have never been held by men in the first place.
What do you tell people who look at you and are inspired by your story, that you've been relentless in trying to achieve a goal and you succeeded? When you're mentoring the younger women in particular, what do you tell them with regards to that as they step into that political bear pit?
Again, I think, as has already been said, you have to remember every step of the way what you are there to do. You remember how good you are in that particular sphere of influence or leadership. not in a pompous or arrogant way at all.
With humility.
But yes, with humility. But in order not only to prove a point, but more importantly, to secure another rung up the ladder for all women the world over. And this brings me to another point that I make severally at various female fora. And that is that all women have an obligation to support other women as they go up the ladder, unless it is quite clear that those women are criminally connected in some form or the other. But if that is not the case, then we have to learn as women to put aside our little petty nuances and grievances, which for the most part are quite unfounded, actually, And this is the truth. And to remember that if one woman breaks a glass ceiling, then she's opening a space that tomorrow might be occupied by your sister, your daughter, your niece. It is very important that women learn to support other women, no matter their feelings.
That's wonderful. I'm going to go down the line. If you maybe, I don't know if you can hear his mic, but no, I want to ask Dr. Nick Cheeseman from Oxford University now. You go around Africa, and your expertise is the political systems in Africa. You've written books on it. You're passionate about it. There's a lot of talk about quotas, that we need to have a quota. And I think roughly about 56 countries around the world had elections last year, and 17 of them had quotas for women. 11 of those 17 were African. The problem, it seems to be, with quotas, though, is that as you go down right to the council level on ground, people just ignore them. And so what have you seen when you've been to Kenya and all the rest of the places? Is that the sense that you've got, that you can't just say quotas are not enough, they've got to be enforced?
I think that's very true, Mark, but I think there's a bigger question with quotas, which is about whether or not when you have a quota, you empower women within Parliament. So let me give you an example of a conversation I had with an appointed MP in Kenya. In Kenya, like many countries, retains a situation where the president is able to appoint a small number of MPs after winning the election. In Kenya, the number is 10, and it's typically used to top up the number of female MPs in the legislature, which is generally seen by all the parties to be a good idea. But the female MPs who are nominated say that they find that when they go to Parliament, they're shouted down, not only by male MPs, but also by elected female MPs, who say, and this is the phrase, "Where is your constituency?" And what they mean is, where is your social base? Who are you bringing to the table? Why are we listening to you? Can you bring 30,000 votes, 40,000 votes? Can you bring... And I think that's one of the dangers of the quota system, if what you do is use a quota system simply to top up. Now, what the Kenyans tried to do with the last constitution, which I thought was a really interesting idea, was not simply have a quota system where you top up women, have a system where you would say women need to be elected, and you would try to get to more women's shortlists, have women in constituencies. And so they had a situation where in every constituency in the country there was a women's representative as well as an MP, a governor, a senator, and so on. The one advantage of that was that every woman who ended up in Parliament, and still not enough women ended up in Parliament, or every woman who did end up in Parliament through that route could say, I won an election. 30,000 people voted for me. I beat these 5 candidates. I deserve to be here. I have that weight behind me. So I think one of the things we could try and think about in the future is how can we enforce quotas, which I think are clearly an important thing, but doing it in a way that still connects people to an electoral base that means that when they get into Parliament, they're able to say. So let me give the example of Rwanda very quickly before wrapping up. You know, what a lot of people would say as a critique of Rwanda would be, it's fantastic there are so many women there, but actually when it comes to some of the big decisions, women's issues aren't put on the front foot, they're on the back burner. And that translate that from high levels of women in Parliament to better policies in terms of women more generally, you need something else. And the figures that we were talking about earlier for the UK and US are interesting on this, right? The UK and US have done far more than most African countries in terms of promoting, you know, or trying to combat, for example, gender-based violence. There are very few good gender-based violence laws on the books in Africa. And yet female representation in the British Parliament is tiny.
23%
In
or
Congress,
something.
it's shameful.
Yeah.
So there's not always a direct
17%.
correlation between the number of women in the lower house.
Yeah, and laws that are passed that are...
So I think it's a two-step process. First, use quotas, increase female representation. But second, think about the sources of influence that people will have within Parliament and work to strengthen that.
And that empowers them and makes it worthwhile. Otherwise, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
Dr. Scott, do you think that women who get into these positions have an obligation particularly to women? Because I look at it as more women is all very well, but it has to trickle down to more women below. Otherwise, what's the point, right?
Right. One of the ways that women, when they get in power, can empower other women is through your staff. When I had my political appointment, and initially it seems that a lot of women sent me their resumes. And so it became a position where my staff was pretty much all females, black males, and Puerto Rican males, to the point that I had an employment discrimination suit filed against me saying I was discriminating against white men because there was more white men in the agency than the other groups. But what I responded, I said that I'm the first black woman to hold this position. If you present me with the stats for every white man in this organization as to how many black women, how many Puerto Rican women they have on their staff, and you show me that they are not discriminating against, then we'll address my office. So I think that's what we have to look at. When you get in these positions, you see yourself as empowering women, and you're going to catch flack if you bring a lot of women on your staff, but you have to look at that young lady who comes to work for me. I'm teaching her to replace me because this is part of succession planning also. So I think we have an obligation to bring somebody along with us and also to support the women who are in similar positions as you. And let me just make one comment about quotas, because we've had a real bad experience in the U.S. with quotas as it relates to race. And a lot of people made the argument, and that's how they sort of won in court, that when you have quotas, that you become stigmatized, that if I get affirmative action scholarship, then people are going to see me that I didn't deserve to be there. But I'm there. And once I get there, I can show people that I am qualified. And so I think that we shouldn't use that as just an excuse not to put in quotas to say that people get there, they don't have a constituency. Urge those women who got those appointments through the quota system to go into the legislature, to present legislation, to show that they are qualified to be there. And so maybe at some point they will feel the need to get them elected.
That is great. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to change things up a little bit. You sit where you are. I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to transform into Matthew Tostavan, who is the head of desk at Reuters, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And you were based at one stage in Johannesburg, weren't you? So African issues are your forte.
Indeed, I've had a chance to work in quite a few African countries over the past 20 years and also, obviously during that time, it's also been a time of great democratic transition in many places. But I'm sure also it's in terms of the role of women and the role of women in power, that's changed a great deal as well. So it's great for me to have this opportunity to be with such illustrious people, to have heard such insights and things already at this conference. Fantastic to be here with everybody. Now, I know that a lot of people in the room are going to have questions for the panel too. So in a sense, I don't want to take too much of everybody's time with my own, but I do have some questions which have really been sort of brought out of the commentaries that people have been making. So maybe if you could indulge me to ask a couple of questions of my own first, and then I think Mark will move the microphone around the room. I thought first I'd start with you, Honourable Minister. You talked about the importance of sort of helping women and so forth once you're in a position of power, once you're in a position of authority. Now, obviously, you have and have been for a long time in very responsible positions, some of the most responsible in Nigeria and by extension in Africa. How much time and space, given the sort of importance of your jobs and of setting an example in doing the job you're doing, are you actually able to sort of balance between how much time do I spend setting an example of competence and of doing the job I'm doing extremely well, and how much are you able to really dedicate to sort of the sort of women's side and bringing women along as well?
You have to hand the mic.
I think, again, it's a very delicate balancing act whenever you're in these positions, because, yes, as women, you find that you do spend an inordinate amount of time, I think a lot more time than men, in ensuring that you are taken extremely seriously. I tell all my male colleagues, and in fact, Mr. President on occasion, my boss, that as female leaders, we work twice as hard as men. We not only have to prove or overprove our stance in the workplace, but at the same time, as African female leaders, we take care of our homes, we look after the children, and we actually take care of extended families as well, in many, many ways. So I once made a quip on a podium about needing a husband or a wife to support me at home, rather, because I feel that my male colleagues have the benefit of wives who are, for the most part, able to take care of all the social issues and administrative that come with rearing a family, looking after a home, and in the African context, of course, also looking after various issues to do with extended families as well. Having said that, I think from the time I returned to Nigeria, even in my days in Shell, we were the stalwarts of the women's network in Shell. In those, it was the Shell Women's Network. And mentoring was a key factor of those networks, trying to show the younger ladies coming up the ladder the right examples of what it takes to make it to the top. Start as you mean to continue is one of my favorite terms. Just make sure you start in the right way in the first place. Having said that, it has also become necessary over the years, particularly in petroleum, and I've said this severally as well to my boss, Mr. President, that much as I would like to think it would happen, I have no doubt that after me, it might be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for another woman to come back into petroleum in the next 5-10 years. I think the men will do everything they can to take back their space.
Sorry, that was the men.
Yes, I can see that. So it is incredibly important that we create networks at this time that will hopefully be sustainable till long after we have left, to ensure that in the petroleum sector, at least in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, which is really a very highly male-dominated sector, and I have my chairman, Senate Committee on Gas, Senator Nkechi Wogo, here with us today. She will tell you the same thing. Another distinguished senator, son with her from Nigeria. It is very, very important that we ensure there is a way for women not only to understand the fundamentals of coming into such a complicated sector, because even men flounder, at coming into it, but also to give women a forum where they can meet other women who are moving up the ranks, who own their own companies, who are up in the operating sector, who are in the downstream service sector, et cetera, who can begin to show them the ropes and mentor them within this sector, but more importantly, that can also ensure that we begin to position women in the right educational and professional streams in the academic world, to position them to take the positions that they need to take in the oil and gas sector in the future. And to this end, we had come up after a lot of work with what we call NEWOG, the Network of Women in Oil and Gas. We have finally, I think, solved all the legal issues to do with it to make sure that it will be sustainable after I leave. Because the last thing you want is a network that is killed the moment a man comes in and takes the job over. That is not the intent. I think we've covered all the ACEs, and we expect to launch it before the end of November in Nigeria. So we've done a lot of work on this, and we're hoping that it will reach out extremely far across the country in not only mentoring women within the sector, women who want to come into the sector at all levels, small and big, but also the women for the future in the right academic areas of expertise to take over in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Just very briefly, very briefly, I just wanted to follow up very briefly on that question. You also, and of course, have your own background in the private sector and things too. Do you think it's the job of governments and so forth to be favouring women when it comes to contracts, private sector, making sure it's sort of boosting them in their own way and things as well?
I don't think that governments anywhere in the world can be seen to influence due process. The issue of due process is a very critical one, and it is, of course, steeped in the law parameters of the law. Having said that, I think that quite clearly, if you have the right framework set up, then it is much easier to reach out to women and show them the steps that they need to come into the game. It is not making a quota system for women in terms of contracts that is needed, not at all. It is giving women a level playing field in terms of showing them exactly what they need to do to come into the game in the first place. And I think once women are given that level playing field, many times, as has been seen the world over, they unfortunately or fortunately for us, do much better than men.
That's excellent.
Thank you very much.
Matthew, now, because of time, I think they're chomping at the bit here to join in. So, Keith Vaz, we weren't expecting you here, but we're very grateful that you turned up. MP Keith Vaz, I'm going to let you have the first question.
Thank you very much. I am an accidental visitor. I'm here because my constituent Ramesh said there is an amazing conference going on. And can I say to the 4 speakers that we have heard, I have never heard 4 such inspirational speakers in the 26 years that I've been in Parliament, and now I wish I was a woman to have actually heard these magnificent, amazing speeches from all over the world. It's really about the quota system. Nick raised this, but this is specifically to Mary and any of the others who wish to answer it. I agree. I think it's difficult when national governments have quotas. But what about the party system and the importance of the party having quotas? In the Labour Party in the United Kingdom, we've started all-women shortlists, and that increased the number of women MPs from 20 to 100. When I went into politics, my sister stood for Parliament in the same year. I was elected in 1987. It took her 25 years to get elected. And that's because of the all-women shortlist system. Because they excluded the men in the Labour Party, a woman could get selected. So that deals with the democratic deficit issue of Nick. What do you think about the party themselves deciding to do this rather than waiting for the government to pass legislation?
Well, the fight really is within the party. And is the only way. The party's constitutions would have to be examined, and some of the practices around the world which have favored the election of women to represent their parties would have to be somehow incorporated in legislation. I think that those who are in Senate or parliaments have a special role. The women caucuses in these groups should, in parliament and so on, should raise this matter very strongly. But it happens. It happens in other jurisdictions, and it should also be happening with us. I think so. The risk is that in the selection, a wrong woman might be selected, because we have to be on top of the competition. You see, what was referred to as people, like what you said, you had observed, that maybe those who come in on soft tickets, if I might put it that way, are not taken seriously, can be overcome even within the quota system. If you make sure that you select women who are good and who are perceived to be good and who are not being patronized politically, or somebody likes them, or somebody's girlfriend, but if they are good and they are given the opportunity, you increase the numbers and you tell people that women can make it.
Okay, my
like
mic's
to
a
hand
bit
over to the
funny.
senators who are actually the legislature and let them.
Yes, actually, that's exactly what I was going to do. We have a senator, please stand up, madam. We have a senator from Taraba State, a northern state in Nigeria, and I know that this is something that, well, is close to what you're doing at the moment, and you have some thoughts on it.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Senator Aisha Al-Hassan from Taraba North. I represent Taraba North in the Senate. Taraba North is in northern Nigeria, northeast Nigeria, where you have, in the northeast of Nigeria, the people are predominantly Muslims. And under Islamic law, a woman is said, Islamically, that a woman cannot lead. Therefore, that one is there, and cannot be a leader, rather. And the fact that you are a woman in northern Nigeria, you are supposed to be subservient. You are supposed to be behind the men, behind the scene. Your place is the home. So women in northern Nigeria, especially the northeast where I come from, face this very, very, very big challenge, or these two challenges of being a Muslim woman who is not supposed to be a leader, and the fact that you are supposed to always be at the background supporting a man. That is one aspect. And then in the Nigerian constitution, I am a Nigerian. In the Nigerian constitution, you cannot make a law under the constitution, any law that seeks to give preference to women will be regarded as discriminatory, which is unconstitutional. Therefore, the only way that you can help the women is through the parties. But what obtains in the leading party, the ruling party, which I belong to, the PDP in Nigeria, is that, and I think all the other parties too, but I know of my party, women, when going into any political party contest or political office contest, are given the nomination forms free of charge. I used to say in many fora that giving the women free forms to contest elections without reserving some places for them within the party will be giving them with one hand and taking with the other, because they have to go and contest against the men who look at them as inferior, number one. They have to go and contest against men who are more economically empowered than them. So we face these challenges, and unless the political parties in Nigeria, especially the ruling party, does something about that, we cannot have laws because it will be discriminatory constitutionally. Therefore, it is the political parties that will, if they want to help women, and we need to press on them, advocate through advocacy, try to convince them that they need to do that, because we have a plenty women that are even more capable, with due respect to the men, than the men. Like the Honorable Minister said, women can do better when given the opportunity, because women know the problems of women, they know the problems of their children, they take care of their children and therefore want the best for their children. So when given the opportunity to be in governance, top level, like governors, senators that we are, and so on, they'll do a lot more better than the men. I'll just give you an example. When I was working in the judiciary, I was the first female in the administrative cadre. I was the first female secretary of the FCT Judicial Service Committee. And believe you me, because like the Honorable Minister rightly said, you have to work like twice the men, twice the level of men's work to excel. I tried my best, and I said yesterday that hard work is the key thing. I worked very hard, I excelled, and from then I left that office in 2003. Till now, after me, it is women that are given the position. And in another position of administration that I worked in the judiciary, the Chief Registrar of the FCT High Court, since I got into the office 2003, and since then to now, it has been a woman, 2 women after me. So once you work and excel as a woman, the sky is the limit for other women that you bring in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me move on to the next generation. Tibian Osman is from the School of Oriental and African Studies. Now, SOAS are a great supporter of the Women in Government and Politics Conference. And so I want to give the microphone to Tibian Osman from SOAS, student from SOAS, to ask a question.
Thank you. My group and I were discussing something earlier, and that's why is it important for women to be in government and politics? And we just wanted to ask for your opinions. Is it just a matter of equality, gender equality, or is there more to it than just that?
I guess because I'm a political scientist, they gave me the mic, and I taught this. I'd simply say that politics controls much of your life from the time you are conceived to the time you die. And so if we are not engaged, then other people are making critical decisions for our lives. And if whole gender, which is half of the population or over half in some places, if we give up that right to hold office, to make the decisions, to be policymakers, then we are saying that we don't care about how our lives are controlled from the political perspective. And in most countries, you pay taxes. And so you have no choice over taxes. And the legislators, the administrators, the government officials are deciding how that money is being spent. And so once you get in office, you can make those decisions. You can decide the future, decide your future and the future of other generations. So that's the simplest I make it in my political science classes.
Thanks.
That's good stuff. Can I take one more question from a student? Tuebi Pobeni, where are you? Oh, you're there. You're from the University of the Arts in London, just around the corner, almost walking distance, isn't it? I went past it as I came in. What's your question? Stand up.
I wanted to ask that it's important for us to be able to carry this on, because the conference just ends here, and it shouldn't be like that, because it's important for the younger generation of girls to understand that we can't be persuaded by what the media says we're supposed to be. And how do we change that idea of what girls are today in the media, especially Black women in the media today? It seems like a lot of girls, especially my age, their priorities are not set straight. So before you can even be in politics, you need to be looked at a certain way with respect and dignity. And before you even get into politics, at this stage, the way our generation is moving doesn't seem very possible. So how can we change that?
You can. There are actually people in the. If you want to respond, please go ahead. But actually, over here, there's someone that wants to respond. This thing has opened wide up now. Yes. And over here is a rather interesting lady, Olubanke King Akerele, and she's from Liberia. And she was part. I think you've just taken a little leave, but you've been very significant in Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's cabinet. She was a foreign minister, and I know that I saw you nod sagely there. What were you thinking?
I'd like to help a response to this. First of all, is Councillor Gloria Scott here from Liberia? The first woman Chief Justice of Liberia. I see on the list that she's here. On that issue, I am currently working on a book called The Growing of Africa's Emerging Leadership. The whole thrust of that book is how to prepare the next generation of leaders. And let me say that the focus is on male and female. And the reason is the following. We heard about the cultural imperatives. One of the things we do have to do as we do all this work is we've also got to get to the next generation of young men who are coming up. And to get to them, responding also to what you're talking about, the issue is mentorship. We have very active program in Liberia under the Angie Brooks International Center for Women Empowerment, Leadership Development, International Peace and Security. And the whole idea is to expose the young people, male and female, the emerging leadership, to issues on the agenda. It's not only getting there, but are you attuned to what are the critical issues that have to be dealt with by the time you're in leadership? You have to be prepared. You have to understand the challenges that's involved in the decision-making process. As a result of which, the answer to your question in terms of empowering and helping to get the young women on the right track, you have to be mentored. You have to participate in this mentorship program and be aware of what's coming up. We have the post-2015 agenda coming. I haven't heard anybody talk about that. You all are the young people who are going to be there to operationalize the post-2015 agenda. President Johnson Sirleaf has been given the task by the AU to represent and present Africa's view in terms of the 2015 agenda. But you need to know the issues. You need to become a part of preparing that agenda as we heard. So that's my response to you. And on the cultural issue, we have to get the men involved with us right now so that by the time you get there, right, the men are also on board. They understand the men have to be mentored also by the women, by professional women like us, for them to know the capacity of that. Okay, so this is my inputs. Let me say that I have my book here on women's leadership in post-conflict Liberia, My Journey. The proceeds of the book goes to supporting mentorship and internship of young people, male and female, on the continent. Wherever we do a book signing, the to help in Ghana and in Malawi, to help to finance and support it. In Ghana, you have a gap year. The funds go to assisting the young people during that gap year to a Ghanaian organization to help do this. Mentorship, internship on the issues are critical. You don't just get there. You have to know your dossier. And you therefore are able to make an impact. Thank you very much. And let me say, you talk about mentorship. Dr. Mary Chinere Hess was one of my mentors. In the 70s, mid-70s, while she was still at the, while she was permanent secretary in Ghana, Minister of Finance and Planning, I went there to do a research, okay? In the course of those years, as she said, she was the first African woman resident representative of UNDP. She led the way for us. I'm a former UNDP resident representative in a number of countries. Okay, and these were our models, President Johnson, Sirleaf, and all. Hard work, yes, and working hard, understanding the dossier. So you can indeed, as Madam Minister of Petroleum has just said, you can indeed hold your own. But to hold your own, you've got to know the issues. And you don't just arrive. You, the young lady, 19 years old, parliamentarian, congratulations. But let me tell you, you've got to work to get to understand the issues. You can't just get there and think you can be minister or whatnot. You've got to know the issues. You've got to understand them. Then you can stand on your own. Thank you very much. And my congratulations, Madam.
I know this is not the Oprah Winfrey show, but I'm going to plug your book. This is the book right here, and it's available if anyone wants to read it. It's called Women's Leadership in Post-Conflict Liberia, My Journey. Okay. Winnie Ayuli Jemede would like to acknowledge Ambassador Bennett.
At some point when the Winnie Jemede series team was doing the planning, we got a lady called Ambassador Bennett. She was introduced to us through a mutual friend, and it turns out that one of the things that she pioneers keys in to one aspect of what this conference is deliberating over. Auntie Mary said a few things when she was speaking, and Auntie Olubanke sort of reiterated on those, talking about the role that men should be brought to play. After I ran it by a man in my life. Now, I would like to say, Auntie Mary, that I don't stand behind him. He stands behind me. And then he and I and a couple of members from our team invited Ambassador Bennett to Nigeria, and we took her to dinner. And after sitting with her through dinner, we saw clearly how she had understood the time that we speak of and how that time is indeed now. And as I said, she pioneers a work called Elect Her Africa. I'm going to preempt you, madam, by just saying that the idea behind this work is to be able to have offices in the 5 African regions that support the elective goals of women for office across Africa. So it is indeed timely and very exciting, because I imagine that if you have Elect Her Africa offices in the 5 regions of Africa, then perhaps we could also have Advocate for Her Africa. And perhaps we could have Appoint Her Africa. And perhaps we could go on from there and have Employ Her Africa. Platforms that spring up across the region that encourage and carry the message of what we are speaking about today. One more thing before I call her. We've talked a lot about succession planning, and this is just to say that the Winnie Jemede series, in a couple of months, is actually launching another platform called Future Africa. And that platform will encompass succession planning and a lot of the things. And I'm so glad, as I said at the beginning, almost every woman here in their own capacity could have stood behind this podium. And you've seen that from all the comments that have come, from veterans, from my generation, and even from the questions that the younger ones are asking. So it is indeed an exciting time. We have something called Youth Internship Africa, where the Winnie Jemede series takes underprivileged university and secondary school students and attaches them to organizations for 2-week to 1-month internship programs. So it could be a rotating internship, or it could be a project-based internship. So all of these things will feed together to strengthen the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite Ambassador Erica Bennett.
I think I'll stand over here. Honorable Minister, distinguished panel, the lady that just spoke, I mean, when I met her, I saw beauty, I saw charm, I saw brilliance, I saw elegance, And in my talking with her, I've learned she can be very direct. But I just really want to say thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Dr. Mary, I stand here because of her. I stand here as the first diaspora ambassador because of her. She was the President Kufuor's advisor. We jokingly say, you ran the country. And she did. And she did. So I'd like to just publicly thank you for all that you do and all that you continue to do to support us as women, and particularly those of us from the diaspora. Do not get confused by this American accent. I have lived and worked in Africa for the past 40 years. And you're not an African minister because you're born in Africa. You're an African when Africa is born in you, correct? Elect her in Africa. But before I say that, I really must bring you greetings on behalf of the chairperson of the Africa Union. She did send you a letter, and you did not get the letter in time to publish in your book. But she wanted to say that she wished she could have been here, number one. Number two, she wants to applaud what you're doing. This is exactly what she would like to see done all over Africa. And I want to share with you, before I talk about this, I want to share with you two things. One, my sister, President Joyce Banda. I want to show you the power of the African woman. My good sister friend, Joyce Banda, called when she was having a situation in her country. She was the vice president, but they were trying to instill someone else as the president. So she called me and she called some of our other friends and told us what was happening. I said, okay, we'll call you back. I called some of the women in this room, Dr. Juliet Twackley, Don Maroli, Grace from Uganda, Kimmy from Nigeria. Where's Don Maroli? She's the guru, the business guru from South Africa. I called some of these women and I said, our sister is having a challenge. I called my country. You know, I'm 99% Nigerian, but I live in Ghana. I called my countrymen and said, I need a plane. What time was the question. I have to do something to support my sister. I called my sisters in Ghana and said, I need you. I called my sisters in Kenya and said, I need you. Within 5 hours, we had a plane. We had 100 ladies. We had BBC, CNN, Reuters. We had everybody standing by. We called the Attorney General, Minister, and we said to him, if our sister is not sworn in by 5:30, you will see us landing our plane. Our sister was sworn in at 4:30 p.m. He's telling me I have to wrap this up, but I just wanted to give you the power of the woman. Elect her in Africa. You'll have this brochure So it will give you all the details in terms of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. This is just to announce the fact that we're going to do it. And again, we thank WJ Series for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Dr. Erica Bennett, ladies and gentlemen, please, if I could ask the panel to rise and be acknowledged. Dr. Mary Chinnery-Hess, Honorable Minister, Dr. Nick Cheeseman, Dr. Scott from Howard University, thank you so much for that insightful panel.